Welcome to Small Business Success Talks Summer of Strategy series, where I interview guests to get their expertise in marketing and business development to help us all plan accordingly for the rest of 2023. Summer is a perfect time to evaluate how well, or maybe not so well, the year is going, determine what the gaps are, and learn from some of the best in the business building industry, their strategies and tactics to close the gap and build momentum in your own business and life. I am your host, Christy Smallwood, and let's get strategic. So Sarah, thank you so much for being my guest on Small Business Success Talk. It is our summer of strategy. And so I really, really love the fact that I have you showing up as a guest. You are also one of my marketing podcast network peeps. So we also like to just give a quick shout out to the whole network of marketing of podcasters that we have that share their expertise in the arena. And I'm stumbling over my words for some reason. It's crazy. I was like, I thought I knew what I wanted to say. So sorry about that, everybody. But back to Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here to talk about this topic because storytelling in my background and why I'm so passionate about it is it's such a strong and powerful way to connect with your audience. And when you connect with your audience, you get them to buy and volunteer and re-engage and be loyal and all the things, right? And so there's so many businesses that are always scratching their heads about like, well, how should we talk about ourselves? And what should we spend time doing with when it relates to content? So I love like helping like hone in on the heavy hitters and building that foundation so you can just clarify your marketing messages to actually create content people want to consume.
So speaking of clarifying, so I have a question I've been asking all of my guests for this
Yes.
time. It's kind of an interesting question of
Okay.
if you were to walk into a room, what would you want people in that room to already know about you?
I would want people to know professionally, I'd want people to know that I have over 20 years of experience driving content strategy for large and small brands. And then I'm a certified story brand guide. Like walking in knowing that this works and I've proven it. We've driven top ROI with content. Content's not fluff. It's essential for what you need in various parts of your funnel.
Nice. Did you have something personal? You were
I
very
know.
quick to like, this is the
No,
category.
I was like, that's what I want them to know work wise. Personally, no, I'm just like a nice, friendly person they can approach, I think.
You're good. I've got the marketing mavens, and Brittany's answer was, I just want them to know I'm not really a bitch. Like my face may look like it, but I'm not.
That's so funny.
Well done. I have great guests. So you talk about story brand, and this is one of the reasons why I was really excited to have you as a guest because you are story brand certified, and this is going to be our topic today because I know how big of a deal it is to be able to tell stories. Now, but I want to know from you as the person who's been certified, as the person who's been really focused on content strategy all of these years, what is it that makes it so important? Like, what does small business really need to know when it comes to their content strategies?
Yeah. Well, so like how you can get really sucked into a great Netflix show and you want to just keep watching it, you binge it, or you get into a really great book and you want to just keep reading it. That's because our brains are wired for story. Like the human brain is wired to pay attention when people start telling stories. And that is why when businesses can figure out how to tell their stories well and how to speak in a way that's going to connect with their audience, they're going to listen more. And that's what we want. We want to ultimately drive sales, right? We want to engage our audiences in that way. And so that's why, the power of storytelling is so much more powerful than stats and numbers. alone. Stanford had done a study, and it was like 8 to 10 times more sticking power, like a story has, than just like facts and figures alone. And it's again, just because our human brain is wired that way. So I would say that's just kind of like, just think of we're humans marketing to other humans, and we need to treat and respect that way. So that's why it is so incredibly powerful. But the thing is that so many companies are talking about themselves wrong, really. I mean, they're talking about themselves in a way that is actually going to turn off their target audience or not hook them and engage them. And so there's so much missed opportunity of like how you can clarify what the heck you talk about. And so one of the things I love doing and what I've done the last 20 years was I've always been really focused in on, the editorial storytelling, like the year-long content calendars, and what are we going to continue to talk about, and how do we focus in on the strategy of like, what are our 3 like storytelling pillars. And that works amazingly well when you have already established your company, you already have a really good feel for who you are and what you want to talk about. But what I've really realized, as I've now also work with small businesses and mid-sized businesses, and even some large businesses still kind of are fuzzy on this, but what I've realized is there's so many companies that just need to get the foundational stuff right first, then they can build on and add on all this editorial storytelling. So that's why I became certified as a story brand guide, because the story brand framework, and I'll explain like what the heck that even means. If you're listening, you're like, what's story brand? I'll give you the overview. But like story brand, basically it helps you do that for your business. It clarifies the main points and words and things that are going to matter. And it does it in a way that's actually really contrary to how most businesses talk about themselves. So as a business, when you do it, you're going to stand out. You're going to stand out more from the competition. You're going to create that hook. You're going to better connect with your audience. So it's like a nice 1-2 punch. So I can help, like my clients, I do consulting. And so with my clients, they'll hire me to come in and help do it for them, like kind of figure out how to clarify and do that. Or I have some online courses and team workshops and things where I can teach them how to do it. We go through it together. So it's kind of like either or, but that's why I think anyone who wants to connect with their audiences cannot ignore storytelling. You can't ignore the content that you're putting out there, because that is how people are going to get to know, like, and trust you over time.
I liken it, well, and I'm somewhat familiar. I'm not certified, somewhat familiar, because I have a book and I've had these discussions, and that's why I keep looking around. I was like, oh, wait, right here it is.
Where's this book? Yeah. Woo, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Yep. He's the founder of Story Brand. Yes.
And I'm loving this because, one, it's very similar to the hero's journey, which I write about in my book, Being Super. So when you're taking the hero's journey of a storyline, and then where you in your life are within that kind of that framework, what kind of tools that you need at certain stages of your life to kind of get through the battles that are to win victory and have a defining moment and move it on to continuing adventures, right? Yes. All of that. And then I looked at this framework for this. I was like, there's heroes and there's villains. And I'm like, this is fantastic. So, yes. Okay, then let's start with a little bit of how does the story brand framework work? And then let's keep going from there.
Okay, so the story brand framework is really rooted. It's rooted in a ton of science, like brain science, and how we engage with things and how our brains work and being able to catch people's attention. Okay. So this is not all fluff, but there is an art and science to like what we do. And so it's a 7-part framework. And so like, I'll summarize the 7 parts. It's, the first is that every good story has a character. And this is the character that is like, from, if you're running your own business, your character is your customer. Okay. So you have a main character. They are the hero of the story, as you mentioned.
And I was going to say, let's pause for a hot second, because you already mentioned a lot of businesses get their messaging wrong.
Yep.
My thing is, those businesses tend to talk about themselves way too much.
Correct.
And so point number one that Sarah is saying right now, and there's a book that starts the same phrase. It's not the story brand book, but I read a book one time that literally started with, "It's not about you." So while you, like, I and my business are part of the story, I am not the central character of the story that I'm a part of. So if we, like, for me, that was one of the hardest things, like, oh, this is not about the journey of my own business. This is my person's journey that I'm trying to help. So,
Yes.
okay, great. I just want to
Yep.
really tighten that up to really emphasize it ain't about you, it's about them.
Yes, 100%. And really the first three parts of this story brand framework, it's going to become like really clear on that, because you're right. Most people will start with, well, we're the brand, we're the hero, we're going to talk all about ourselves. But what I tell companies is, and you'll see as this flows out, but your customer isn't, they're looking for help because they have a problem that they need some help with, which is why they're even seeking out and researching your products or your services. So it's actually the second part of the framework. The first is you have a character who with a problem, okay? And the problem everyone does. So even if it's as simple as they're hungry and they need to find food. Okay. They have a toothache. They need to find a dentist, like their leads are down. They need to find a marketing expert to help them figure out how to attract more leads. Like
Right. They have a busted tire. They've got to find a new, yes,
yes.
yeah.
Yes. And so you hone in on, okay, well, what actually is their problem? Well, they're going to have this problem. So at that point, they're kind of feeling maybe a little grim and dire and worried or stressed, or like, well, they have to make a decision. Like, how are they going to fix this thing? So then in every story, there's a character and there's a hero and a guide. Okay. So the next phase, part 3, is they meet a guide. Well, this is where your company comes in. You are the guide. The guide is actually the strongest character of any story, because they've been where where the hero has been, and they're several steps ahead of them. They know how to solve this issue. They're there with support and aid and advice and tips to help them be successful. So you think about like any movie you ever watch, if we apply this into like the movie world.
I restarted Star Wars recently, so Yoda comes to mind.
Yeah. So both Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi are both guides to Luke Skywalker. I see Wonder Woman behind you in the picture there, like in the Wonder Woman movies recently, the live action ones. Steve Turner, like the boyfriend interest, he's actually the guide. He's like helping her kind of like her transition into embracing being this superhero and having to let go of her past and like save the world and all these things. Like every story has like a hero and a guide, everyone. And the biggest thing is that the hero is the weakest character, because they have this problem. They're battered, they're beaten, they're confused, they're overweight, they're stressed, like all the things that your customer may have, and that guide is the strongest. So my tip here is, you don't want to play the weaker character as a company. You want to be the strongest character. So you want to be that guide that is helping them. But in storytelling, you have to make sure then that character, that hero, is in the limelight, because they're out there looking, and you need to talk to them about their issues to hook them and get them interested. So we have a character who with a problem, then they meet that guide. That's the third. And then the fourth step then is, okay, well, they've met you. Actually, one more thing on the guide. So with the guide, as we're talking about ourselves, they meet you. So how are they you need to like kind of woo them, right? A little bit at this point of like, are you the one that I want to choose? Like to maybe, do some more with or not? So there's 2 parts to that. And it's really kind of a 1-2 punch. It's empathy plus authority or competency. So empathy, says, oh, I understand. I can relate to what you're going through. I care. And authority and competency shows, I'm an expert. I have done this before. I'm strong. I can help you get through this based on my track record and experience. So this is where you can tout both of them. And it's really important to talk about both of them, because you can say, oh, I understand. I get that this is wrong, but they may not think you're the most credible person to do it. So if you follow it up with, yeah, we've helped thousands, hundreds of, people get through this exact same issue. Well, suddenly, okay, you're really credible. And I feel like you understand what my problem is. So you give them then a plan. So what the heck are they going to do? So we have a character with a problem, meets a guide. You give them a plan. And this is a really simple 1, 2, 3. Like, what are the next steps of what it takes to work with you? And this is something that so many small businesses miss. I do a lot of website audits and wireframes and messaging that comes out of StoryBrand. And it is shocking, how many sites aren't clear on, well, what the heck do I do next? Like, how do I actually work with you? Like, I'm confused. Like, what should I do? I think about the plan step as the analogy I use is like if you picture a rushing river, and you're at like one side of the river and you're like, oh, you want to get across it, but it's too risky. Like you're like, I could die, I could fall in. Well, your customers are at the same point at this place where it's risky, even if they know that they have this problem and you're someone that gets it and can help them with it, they might not cross that bridge to, do more because maybe they'll risk losing money or their reputation or time. Like it's risky, right? It's kind of scary to like put ourselves out there to work with someone else. And so you have this rushing river. Well, all of a sudden, up where the river narrows, you see 3 stepping stones going across this river. Well, suddenly you're much more likely to try to walk across this raging river because you see these stepping stones. So that's really what the plan is. And it's a really simple, straightforward. It's not, you don't overthink it. Maybe it's like, schedule a call. Like for mine, it's, schedule a call. That's step 1. We do a discovery call. Step 2, clarify your marketing messages. And then step 3, enjoy increased sales, like boom, 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 right? It's just simple of like, what are the next steps of what it looks like to work together. So that's the first half of the StoryBrand framework. Any comments or questions before I do the last half of it?
There's just so much. No, it's a beautiful framework. And I like the stepping stones. And what you just said, I was like, oh, when I think of stepping stones, I think of literally the very next 3 steps.
Mm-hmm.
So from like you had schedule a call, let's clean up your marketing messaging and then make sales. I was like, oh, those are actually big stones that may have like there's plenty of room to work in that
in between. Yep.
Right. And I was like, oh, I've missed that because I work in minute detail. Like there's a lot of things going on. And so how do I make those the bigger milestones?
Yeah.
Milestones. See what I did? Stones.
Yes.
So if we take those and those are the actual steps, the milestones to get where I need to get, I can look at those steps differently in my own marketing message. So if those 3 steps then become, here's how easy this is what the milestones are for you. And that, because the detail of the plan, I mean, obviously, like if that's the case, cleaning up your marketing message takes a lot of different little activities, right? There's still plenty of work to do within that step. But it feels like because these 3 big milestones are so simplified that there's hope.
And that's the whole thing. Because if you confuse it with, if you have too many steps, too many details, if you confuse, you lose because people's brains are going to just tune out like, oh my gosh, this is just too much. I don't even understand what it is. And they're going to bounce. They're going to move on to the next thing and they're not going to do the action you want them to do. So it's really important in that plan. That's why I love that 3rd step of the 1, 2, 3 of being like that success outcome. You're showing them what's possible at this point, just through a couple of words. It's very, very top line because later, of course, there's going to be different things when you deliver, like for your example, you just shared a detailed plan. It's going to have a lot of details, but we're not at that phase yet. We're courting here. Like we haven't asked them to marry us. They haven't given us a check yet. They just got this person just has a problem and they know that you're capable of helping them. And now they've crossed this raging river of like, okay, but they're still not buying yet. Okay. Which is why we got to have the last 4 parts of the or really 3 parts of the framework. So I'm going to keep going then with
Yes.
those last 3,
Keep
and then
going.
let me know if you have any questions as I go. So they have this plan then, right? They've gone like, oh, okay, like I'm going to, in my example, I'm going to schedule a free discovery call. Like, let's see what this is about. But you need to, at this point, the next step is you give them this plan and you call them to action. So there's a stat like over 70% of small businesses in America are missing a direct call to action on their website.
What? Okay,
Yes.
I say that because it seems so simple to me to say
Yeah.
to them a big button that says call, contact, do something right now
Yes.
with this
Yes.
button.
Yeah, over 70%. And I've seen it because of all these like web reviews that I mentioned that I do for different companies. And it's so true. Or they're confusing call to actions, they're too vague. There's multiple call to actions on a page. You're not really sure what to do. So again, if you confuse, you lose. Your customer is not gonna, they're just going to stop. And so you want to call them to action. And there's 2 different types of call to action. There's a direct call to action, something like schedule a call, request a quote. There's so many different types of those things, depending, send a text too, like whatever that first step is that you want people to take. That's the direct call to action. And then there's a transitional call to action, because this is where like a freebie or some kind of value is it comes into play, because not everybody that you talk to is going to be ready to like do that thing right there at that moment.
Right.
They may not be ready to buy now, but like in a couple months from now, that's when they're going to be ready. So you want to, as a company, find a way to still capture their information and stay top of mind for them over the next 2 months while they're figuring, things out, or when getting to that point where they're ready for you. So a transitional call to action is like, so you ask them to do the thing, the direct call to action. And in the meantime, download our free blah, 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 so that you can, and you talk to like the success of how it's going to help solve their problem. So again, we're always coming back to that hero and their problem. So that's why freebies and lead generators are so valuable, because you're also showing right away that you're adding value to your potential target customer, that this hero, by giving them something for free that will help solve a little bit of their problem. You're verifying your authority in that space. I also think lead generators in this are really useful for your company, because it's a way to kind of segment your audience. So if you serve a specific audience and you create a freebie for that audience and you market it to that audience, well, everyone who signs up for that thing fits into that space. So for example, if you're a realtor who serves retiring homeowners who want to like downsize, and also like or first time home buyers, 2 very different points in the buyer's journey.
Right.
So if you created a freebie for first time home buyers, everyone signing up for that is a first time home buyer, versus the folks who are about downsizing and they're empty nesters and they're ready to to have something different. So they're a great way to like help you segment your audience list too, and qualify that you're attracting the right people that you want. So that is the this 5th part then, is you're going to call them to action, and you can do that through those 2 ways. And then that then is going to result in either failure or success. So that's the final part, because you've called them to action, but like ultimately you still need to help paint through your content the light and the vision casting of what's at stake if they do or don't do business with you. That's this part you need to ask yourself as a company: what's at stake? What's for my customer? What's at stake if they don't or do business with me? Like, what will happen to this problem? So, and so you talk about the successes, and you can make a bulleted list of here's all the successes that are going to happen. You're helping really cast that vision for what's possible. So this is where you can think about even personally any like purchases you've made or things like, what's success look like and what drove you to be like, yeah, that's what I want. That's great. That's going to solve my problem. That's sold. Versus go ahead.
I chuckle because I think back to there was a landing page I had done for myself. I think it was some sort of a marketing workshop or marketing something. It was in the marketing company. And I did the what happens if you don't do this thing kind of
Yeah.
approach. And it literally, I just created this downward spiral from you're overwhelmed, you start to get stressed, you take that stress out on negative self-talk. By the time you get home, you're yelling at your spouse and your children, and they kick you out of the house, and now you're getting a divorce and you feel depressed. Like it just kept spiraling down to now you're homeless living under a bridge. Don't let that happen. Just come to the marketing thing.
Which is funny, which is humorous. I would say the one tip I would say for everyone else is how I think about failure and success when you talk about them. I think about it as like making cookies, where the failure is the salt. You just want to sprinkle in a little bit, but too much is going to ruin the whole batch and people are going to feel like awful. So I like to focus on failures like short term. So I get your example was funny, like that one kept going, but like
extreme.
yeah, it was extreme, but I would say like think about maybe, a year out, maybe 3 years out max, so that people can really concretely think, okay, this is going to impact even the next 6 months. Like what will be different? How will this help alleviate your problem? Because then you're creating that sense of urgency and realness of like, yeah, okay, I don't want things to stay status quo. I don't want to continue to feel stressed like this. I don't want to keep gaining weight. I don't want to, there's all the different things. I don't want to keep sleeping like crap. Like, so depending, whatever your business does. And so that's how you want to think about it, because heroes will run toward the light and away from the darkness in a story, and you want to help show the customer the consequences. And it's not like negative. I can't think of what people call it. They think, oh, well, it's manipulative. That's the word I was trying to think of. It's not manipulative because you're sprinkling in those failures, but you also, it's the reality. You're the guy. You want this hero to not have this problem. You can help them solve it. It's coming from a very positive place of wanting to help your customer. And so you need to remind them there are consequences at stake here. And so as you paint those positive and negative stakes, that's really going to ultimately help them decide which part of the journey they're on. And that'll be a decision they make. So that's the 7 parts: a character with a problem meets a guide, that calls them to action. And then that ultimately results in success or failure.
I continue to chuckle because the imagery that keeps coming to my mind, I'm having my own stories going through my head here.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh yeah, this is what my hairstylist does every time I sit in the chair. We've had a conversation before. I put something out there and asking like my people, should I go shorter hair, like a more of a pixie cut? Should I just cut it all out? Like it was one of those, I'm frustrated with it. Should I just cut it all off and try something new? And I had done that 10, 15 years ago. And so I had a side-by-side picture. Should I go short or should I stay long? Well, my hairstylist was like, she direct messages me and she goes, no, you are not allowed to do that. That short look is not you and you're not getting it.
Nice.
Like, okay. I was like, okay, I feel protected and safe even from myself, right? My own bad decisions. Because she knows ultimately what I'm trying to accomplish, and she is guiding me there on my style, my beauty look kind of things. That was the thing that came to mind, and that what you had said about the consequences of things. She's also keeping me from making those bad decisions.
Yes. And you trust her, and that's why you keep going back to her. It sounds like, right?
She's protective, and I feel like she's got my back. And yeah, when you trust, like and trust. Wow, what do you know? When you feel like they do have your back, like they're truthful and they're just there to protect you, it's okay to say, here are the pitfalls. Here's the Gen X version. Here's the quicksand to avoid. Like these are the things you want to avoid because it could damage you. Don't do that. Do this instead. And you're right. If we build the rapport and the credibility on the front end, to get them to want to hear from us and want to continue to move along that path with us, there should be no reason why they would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like this 7 parts of this framework, then what you can do is you pull this together. We call it a brand script in the story brand world. And basically it gives you then clarity around an answer for each of these 7 parts. So then you've honed in and you're really clear on what is the main biggest problem and how am I going to talk about it? And why am I the authority and the guide to be able to help? And what does success and failure look like to this customer? So all those pieces come together. And then suddenly you have this brand script of these keywords that I look at as this is the foundation to like all of your marketing and sales content. You pull these words, you use them in different ways. Then once you know that, you know like how to talk about yourself in a way that you're talking, you don't talk about yourself as much. You talk about the customer's problems and how you help it. So suddenly all your experience and stuff, it's the hook. So that's the biggest thing you have to just think about, everyone listening, like for your business is you want to hook them. Your company, your customer doesn't care. Like I work with really big brands as well. Like I have 100-year-old brands I worked with. Your customer doesn't really care that you've been around for 100 years, unless you can say, we've helped thousands, millions at that point, right, of customers over the last years solve this problem. Then they care because then you made it about them. That's why a lot of times people celebrating anniversaries or things like that as a company, it falls flat for the customer because the company is just talking all about themselves. Versus if you make it about the customer, that's when they're going to listen. And that's when you're going to drive better leads and better results for your brand. So that's like something I'm so passionate about this because so many companies talk about this wrong. And as small businesses, we were talking before we hit record about saying there is like, you don't have the luxury of humongous budgets and humongous teams. And there's a lot more scrutiny in all the decisions that you make. So what you do needs to work. I feel like it needs, I run my own business too. So I get that what you do, we want it to work, right? Yes. And you don't want to waste time, and you just need these things to do like extra work for you. And so I love the story brand framework and helping companies figure this out because it does clarify what the heck you're talking about. I was just working with a brand actually this week. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been working together, creating this brand script, going through this exercise of the story brand framework. And it was great because they're this company that had basic kind of is merging. They were 3 separate entities. Now they're all under one umbrella. How the heck should we talk about ourselves? They have multiple different customers that they serve. Yep. How do we think about that? Like, how should they talk to each one?
Like, that's a lot going on.
It's a lot going on. And so whether you're like that kind of chaos, or just like not, it's still confusing if you don't know how to talk about yourself. And you also don't want to waste time and money marketing the wrong thing.
And you already said, if you confuse, you lose. So yep. How do you get that under control?
Yeah, well, that really is, I think the story brand framework helps you not confuse. It helps you hone in on those specific pieces. So you need to, like, big picture, you need to be focused on building the foundations of your content strategy. So this is step 1, I would say, is create your story brand framework. Think about your brand script and these key foundational marketing words and phrases. So you can read the book that you mentioned, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Like obviously work with a certified story brand guide like myself to like help walk you through how to do it and do it for you or do along with you. There's like a lot of different ways you can do it at varying price points, really, that can be very affordable. But then once you have like focus, then you can start building on all the other types of stories in your content calendar. And each month, what are you going to talk about on LinkedIn versus Instagram and all, your podcast and your blog and all those things, right? But you need to really hone in on the right things first because you're just going to be wasting time and money otherwise.
So one of the things, let's talk about maybe a tip that you might have around this question I'm getting ready to ask, because I'd like to get your input.
Okay.
How do you weave testimonials or case studies, what we know as testimonials, reviews, case studies, into this story brand format?
Yeah, so testimonials are really great in the guide section. So when you're talking about yourself, testimonials are a great way to show that authority and that credibility. So this is where you can highlight things that people have said about you, awards, accolades, things that have happened about you and your business. That's the spot. Because that's your moment to shine of like, hey, I empathize with you for these reasons, and I'm an authority for these reasons. And testimonials are fantastic in that section.
Gotcha. Because that's been one of those, like, where would I put that in
Yep.
my right in the
Yep.
framework? Where do I dump that? I know I need to track, even for my own people. I'm like, I need to give them, here's an example of what we just did with this client and how they felt and what they experienced. Like,
Mhm.
now we need to do something with that. But what do we do? Like, where do we put that? And how do we repurpose
Yeah.
it and package it and the whole nine yards? But if I'm
Yes.
giving this framework and I know where to plug it in the framework, then that now makes more sense even to me, and it's less work in the grand scheme of
Yes.
things, I think.
Yes. And I think of like the framework big picture, what I'm talking about too is if you've ever been in a company and they had like a style guide of sorts, like usually
Mhm.
style guides are fonts and colors and pictures and things. I think about the brand script, like the story brand script, as like the style guide of words. Like it's the words, like the foundation of like this is how we talk about ourselves. And then you can pull from, like I said, and use them in multiple different ways. You can create a one-liner to concisely talk about yourself. You can like have all the words for like the great start of a website wireframe, an email sales sequence that hits on like the problems, the successes and the failures, and like all those things really well. Like all of it just starts to unpack your lead generator. Everything needs to tie back to like what problem does your customer have? It all needs to make sense together, because then boom, right? You're going to be helping serve the audience that you want to serve.
Absolutely. Well, Sarah, first of all, thank you. But I also want to get to know you a little bit. What do you got coming up in your business that you're looking forward to, and how are you going to accomplish it?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I always have like a huge list. So I'm a solopreneur as a consultant. And so I always feel like I always have way more things than I ever can get done at one point. So I have a
It's
long
less than
list.
all of us, honestly.
I know the summer's starting to wind down. My kids will, they're gonna be back in school here. And so the nice thing with the fall is that I start to have more time during the day because my kids aren't home with me during the day. So the next two big buckets I would say is I am going to be refreshing and revising both of my online courses that I have. So that's going to be a really big one because I have like a mini course called Brand Storytelling Blueprint, and then I have a bigger like group training program called Brand Storytelling Academy. So I have some ideas on how I'm going to be revising and like relaunching both of those. And then the second big one that's coming up this fall is I'm creating a quiz as a lead generator for my business. It'll be the first quiz that I've created. So I'm doing a whole quiz funnel. And so I actually am working with a former guest I had on my podcast on marketing with empathy, and she's a quiz expert. And she had this great online course that walks you through exactly how to create like a really strategic quiz funnel for your business. And so I'm super excited. I'm like really excited to create this quiz because it's been on my goal list for the whole year is to do a new lead generator that was a quiz, because quizzes statistically perform so well, when you do them right. And so I'm very excited to like geek out on quizzes. So those are the two next biggest things I would say. And then I'm just continuing. I love all the story brand stuff. We have different live stream workshops and trainings and things like that. And it's just so much fun to see the clarity that people have after they go through it. It's almost like if it was a drug, it's sort of like that euphoria where you feel really good because of how much of a difference it makes. So I know that sounds super geeky, Christy, but I geek out on what I do. So I love that. So I just like can't wait. I love like seeing those transformations of, oh my gosh, I've never been able to talk this clearly about my company before. I love that so
It
much.
does become a really big deal. It's a
Yes.
big deal to be able to get it so succinct that when you have to stand up in a room of people to explain like introduce yourself and
Mm-hmm.
have it down, and everybody's like, ooh, that's great. Like you can
Yes.
see it on their face and they're nodding. Like the room is now engaged because for that first 10 to 15 seconds, you were so succinct that you still have space left for that pregnant pause to just pull them in. And I'm like, oh,
Yes.
it works so good. So I totally
Yes.
get the geeking out because as a speaker, I'm like, I need all that I can to hone my words
Yes.
so that the
You
body
get it.
language energy just brings them in. I love that. So yes, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and I'm excited for you because you are actually the first person I need to keep up with you. You're the first person I've had who has used a quiz or will be using a quiz funnel.
Yes.
I'm very curious to see how that works out for you because I would love to try to do something like that myself. You
Yes. Well, maybe like after I get it live and we see how it performs, like I could come back on and like
that
share
would
my
be great.
insights. Like
Let's
what did I
let's just go ahead.
learn? What
Yeah,
was bad? What was good? Like I'm happy to be an open book there because the difference between like a straight up quiz versus a quiz funnel, for those of you listening, that's like, what does that mean? There's a lot of just random quizzes you can take, but then after you take it, nothing really happens after. So as a business, that's a waste. You don't want to just create a quiz for the sake. Like I think of like Instagram and you do a poll or quiz or something, right? Nothing
right.
else happens. So with the quiz funnel, it's literally being very intentional about they take the quiz, then how do you capture their email, then what's the first email and the second email and the third, and like what does that process look like, soup to nuts, what's all the content in each of those pieces of the funnel so that you can capture that lead to market to them down the road, and ultimately you're talking in a way that's hopefully going to get them to convert.
Yes, I'm excited about that. So I'm excited
Mhm.
for you, and I'm very happy that you were one of my guests for this summer of strategy. So thank you so much, Sarah, for that. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Likewise, this has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to having you back. So those that are listening, stay tuned because we will have her back eventually to find out more about these quiz things. But in the meantime, get your story together. And remember, the main character is your customer, not you. Start there and keep going. Go back, take notes, and build out your framework. And if you have any questions or you need help, call Sarah. That's what she's for. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the Summer of Strategy series on Small Business Success Talk. Remember to share us with your network, leave us a great review, and subscribe for the latest episodes.